Hey everybody, LeadSpeed here. Oh boy, I gotta admit, I was stuck for what to talk about this time. Now, there is stuff to talk about, but some of them I don't want to talk about in general, and then there's like a couple of things I don't want to talk about till later on. And I don't want to just skip ahead because I want to post this video. I want to post this duel first. So yeah, I'm doing that. That's basically what I'm doing, basically. So with that being said, though, like, I guess examples of like what I'm gonna save for later is that there's a synchro I want to talk about later, but I'm not gonna talk about it in this video because I'm not planning to use it in here. But yeah, that's basically what I gotta say about that. And then there's stuff like in general I don't want to talk about at all right now. It generally is like Black Wings, and you know, all the hype they have, and people saying they're overhyped or whether or not that's true or not. I don't feel like talking about that. I feel like that's just me asking for trouble, basically. So what am I gonna talk about? Well, I'll do a separate video talking about this as a whole. You know, like on DevPro or Dueling Network or something like that. Probably DevPro, just because I can do it in private and not get bothered by anybody. Well, not bothered, but not like flooded with messages or anything like that. So it's basically this thing about, you know, where do we draw the line when it comes to a plant deck? What I mean is basically like, I don't know. Like, where do we go from here? It's just, where do we draw the line? It's kind of weird, and I don't know. It's like, when you think about plants, what do you think about? You think about maybe like a few of them, right? You talk about a few of them, maybe. The ones you probably think about are like Lonefire Blossom, Spore, Glow Bulb, Dandylion. You may talk about Titanial, Giga Plant, maybe. You know, because of Gigabytes and stuff like that. But like, really though, like, does anybody ever talk about like the other plant support? Not really. There's only a few that are like just good generally, and it's kind of weird. They're all over the place, and Lonefire's arguably the best one, arguably the best plant support besides, I guess, Giga Plant. But they're kind of all over the place, and that's for another video. But where do we draw the line when it comes to a plant deck? Because, you know, when we think about Dragon Roar plants right now, basically, you know, they run like 3 plants in the deck, and it's basically the plant engine. You know, Lonefire Blossom, Spore, and Dandylion. Back then, you also had Glow Bulb as well, and then you had like Debris Dragon and stuff like that. But like, where do you draw the line? I don't know. It's kind of a weird topic, but I kind of want to know what you guys think about this, because honestly, like, when you think about a deck like Quickdraw Plants, obviously that ran the plant engine and the plants I mentioned earlier, but it does not run stuff like Lord Poison or, you know, Botanical Girl, Blue Rose. It doesn't really work with any. They don't use those. It doesn't synergize with the deck, and it sucks when only a few select plants are good enough to be just splashed in other decks. I mean, Giga Plant's good in like a couple. You can use Giga Plant technically, but I don't know how many people actually use Giga Plant right now. But I mean, obviously Giga Plant's great plant support, and I guess that's kind of the thing too, like plant support. Like there's a lot of it, but it's kind of all over the place, to the point where it's like there's some of them that you never see me use because it just doesn't seem to work. They just don't synergize with the deck all that well. But with that being said, though, like, do we call something like Dragon Roar Plants an actual plant deck? Do we call it plants even though there's only 3 in it? Technically, yes, but at the same time, I get why people don't agree with this, because you're only running 3 out of like however many cards in your deck. 40 cards at the very minimum. If you're just running like the minimum 40, and you have 3 plants. I mean, it's an important part of the deck, technically, because you're using cards like Debris Dragon, Card Trooper, using like Card Trooper to mill stuff like Dandylion, Spore, etc., or your big dragons, and you have like Debris Dragon to bring back your Dandylion, your Card Trooper, or if you have like a Dragon Roar on the field, you could go Debris Dragon, get back a Spore, and then you could tune Spore with the level 7 to make a level 8 Synchro. and stuff like that. But I don't know, like, where do we draw the line? Like, what makes a plant deck? I mean, there's so many. I mean, there's obviously different ways to play it. You can run like a plant beatdown deck. You know, you just swarm the field with giant plant type monsters, and you use cards like Polynosis to negate the summon of a monster or a spell or trap, and destroy that monster by tripping a plant. Use stuff like Giga Plant to keep cranking out plants that you can sacrifice for Polynosis and stuff like that. And then you had Titanium to control the board as well, because she contribute a plant to negate a card effect that's targeting a card that's on the field, even if it's the opposing side. Like if they're targeting their monster with a card effect, you can negate that effect by tributing a plant type monster. Now, they're just kind of all over the place. Like, there's no archetype, which, I mean, that's fine and everything, because sometimes, I mean, technically psychics aren't really an archetype. I mean, you know, Serene Psychic Witch, Hyper Psychic Wizard, I mean, I don't really think it's an archetype. It's a series of monsters within the psychic type itself. Like, they're technically not an archetype, but they flow well enough together that you could almost consider them an archetype. And you could throw them in like a few different decks. Now, with plants, that's not really as much of the case. There's like 4 plants that were like splashable in like various decks because of their flexibility. And because of the flexibility, yeah, I guess that kind of led to some problems, I guess. But I don't know. It just reaches a point where it's like, well, you only run like a couple of them in there, but you call it plants anyways. But in here, I'm running like more plants in the deck, but the problem is, in this deck, I can't run certain plants because it doesn't really work. As strange as that may sound, it doesn't really work out as well. If I run like Botanical Lion, like, what does it do for this deck? It doesn't really do anything. And stuff like that. It doesn't really do anything for this freaking deck. So it's kind of weird. The plant support's kind of all over the place. And it kind of sucks that if you're trying to play a plant deck by itself, it's kind of all over the place. Like Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis. Yeah, I know some people are like, what the heck is that? It's a level 8 plant, and like, I'll put it on screen right now, but like, basically, when she dies, you inflict 800 damage, and then you can banish a plant during your end phase, I think, to special summon it from your graveyard in defense mode. But you cannot special summon it except with its effect or with the effect of Phoenixian Seed. You can't just throw it in a plant deck. You have to run a specific type of plant deck. A plant deck that can, like, mill a lot, basically. And I remember seeing a Lightsworn build that milled off, like, Evil Thorns and stuff like that as fodder for the reviving of Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis. But the thing is, I couldn't just run in here because it just doesn't really work. Because I don't want to banish plants by my graveyard, at least not the important ones. And there's not enough good plant monsters. Honestly, I feel like that's what the problem is. There's not enough good plant monsters that work with each other to do anything, and that's kind of the thing too. That's why everyone's just like running 3 plants in a deck, because they're technically the most usable and they're arguably the best. Like Lonefire is obviously the best. I mean, Giga Plants pretty much following up right behind him, but again, it's just like, you're not going to use these in like plantsynchro or like Quickdraw Plants or whatever. You're not going to run Giga Plant in that because it doesn't synergize really. I mean, yeah, his effect can bring back Spore or Lonefire or Dandylion, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem to synergize. So it kind of sucks. I mean, if you're splashing him in other decks, but you can't really play pure plants, at least not a really good one that's somewhat usable. I don't know. Maybe you guys can prove me wrong. And I'm more than happy to be wrong if you can prove me wrong. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. So I'm talking about plant support being all over the place, and then what makes a plant deck? Like, where do we draw the line with that shit? But yeah, let me know what you guys think about that, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.